We are live, and I'm joined this week by Tim Aiden because we're gonna double up on this episode, considering that we have Thanksgiving coming up. Tim's gonna be traveling for the holidays, all obviously busy as well, so I didn't want to record tomorrow night. So we're gonna talk about Maryland as well. But before we do that, thankfully, Michigan State and Memphis finally got that game over. Nice little half hour for the last 5 minutes. Love to see that, but we'll be reacting to college football rankings, which are starting right now. So Tim, thanks for joining me tonight. I think the big question for Penn State is, does Notre Dame jump them, or does Penn State stay at number 4? Tim, what are you thinking where Penn State ends up? Do they keep that number 4 slot, or will Notre Dame jump them given their, I don't want to say impressive wins, but some ranked wins, right? They just beat Army. They said they went over Texas A&M. So what are you thinking?
Boy, it's hard to say, Pat. Obviously, Notre Dame did blow out a ranked Army team, so that does look good, even if we think Army might be a tad overrated. But they still have that. Still, if you want to compare, they have the same exact record as Penn State, and their one loss was to middling Northern Illinois team, whereas Penn State's loss was to potential Big Ten champion Ohio State. And, given how Penn State gritted out a tough win on the road at Minnesota, and I think, gut feeling, I think they stick at 4, but I guess I wouldn't be surprised, though. I can see people make an argument for maybe switching Penn State and Notre Dame. So I guess we'll see what happens. But if you put a gun to my head, I'd say Penn State will stay at 4 and still be slotted for the 6th seed.
I think for this week, at least, Penn State stays at 4. And I've obviously been tweeting a lot about Penn State and Notre Dame this week, and both fan bases think it's absolutely ridiculous that the other one would be ranked above the other. But resume-wise, it's close, right? I think the biggest differentiator is the fact that Penn State lost to the number 2 team in the country. And like you said, Notre Dame lost to an average, maybe slightly above average MAC school in Northern Illinois. But everything else is decently close, and there's a lot of things that Notre Dame has in its favor as far as best wins. I mean, going to Texas A&M and beating Texas A&M at Kyle Field is an impressive win. Even Louisville is a pretty impressive win. But after that, Notre Dame's schedule really weakens out. We'll see what people think about Navy. That was a ranked win at the time. Navy has kind of fallen off. Army, of course, was a ranked win last week. But as far as like efficiency models and analytics go, like ESPN has the FPI, Penn State has the majority of the best wins. So Louisville's ranked 13th in FPI. Texas A&M is 15th. After that, it's USC. That's a Penn State win, which Notre Dame does play USC this week. So that's potentially a point for why Notre Dame can jump, I think, either next week or the week after that, depending upon what happens. But then it's Minnesota at 33. That's a Penn State win. Georgia Tech at 40. That is a Notre Dame win. Wisconsin at 41. That's a Penn State win. Washington at 45. That's a Penn State win. Illinois at 47. That's a Penn State win. West Virginia at 49. That's a Penn State win. So you get the idea, right? That Penn State there's a reason that Penn State's strength of schedule is like 32nd and Notre Dame's strength of schedule is like 78th. And that's because Penn State has the depth of wins that Notre Dame does not. Does Texas A&M, if they beat Texas and all of a sudden that win does look like way better than anything else that Penn State has, remains to be seen. But that's at least the argument for Notre Dame. But it's close. Both teams are flawed, and I think it's just a matter of kind of what the flavor of the month is. All right. Beyond that, big question. I mean, it doesn't necessarily affect it doesn't affect Penn State as far as like what their ranking is, but who they play. How far does Indiana drop? How far does Alabama drop? How far does Ole Miss drop? Conventional wisdom would say that Alabama is still kind of the 3-loss SEC team that would be most likely to get in. I've seen a lot of people say that Alabama and Ole Miss are eliminated. Let's see what happens this week, and specifically with Alabama, because it's really probably going to come down to a 2-loss ACC team versus a 3-loss Alabama team if Alabama beats Auburn next week. So, everyone's
Illinois being in the top 20. Illinois' miracle win last weekend definitely helps the strength of schedule.
Where are you at? So we're both watching this. Do you see Illinois at 23? Is that the most updated?
Yeah.
Okay. So
UNLV is 22nd.
Okay, so you're slightly above me. All
Maybe
right,
I'm slightly ahead of you.
Yeah, it's okay.
I won't spoil it for you.
No, you're okay. So yes, Illinois stays ranked at 23. I even missed the ranking starting. I was so into my Alabama jargon. So yes, Illinois stays ranked at 23. That's an important win for Penn State because, like I was saying last week, we arbitrarily say that the top 25 is important. If you're ranked 27th, I guess not as important as being 25. But Texas A&M with a big drop. Texas A&M drops all the way to 20. That is pretty big because
that is a bad loss to Auburn. So.
Yeah. Some people were thinking that Texas A&M maybe stays in the 15 to 16 area.
BYU plummeted to 19th.
That is not the case. So Texas A&M, that is a big drop for Texas A&M. And we're talking about FPI, right, where Penn State's best win is number 18 USC and Notre Dame's best win is 13 Louisville. But what we have to remember is this is the college football playoff committee. And right now they are saying Texas A&M is the 20th ranked team and Illinois is the 23rd ranked team. And it looks like, Louisville shouldn't be ranked. It doesn't look like Army's going to be ranked. So right now they have Notre Dame with one ranked win. They have Penn State with one ranked win. And if Illinois beats Northwestern next week and Texas A&M loses to Texas, all of a sudden one of Notre Dame's bigger arguments being that we have the best win. Not necessarily the case. Not necessarily going to be the case, at least in the eyes of the College Football Playoff Committee, which is all that matters to. They are the ones making the decisions.
Absolutely.
All right, so we have Arizona State at 16. Again, not too big of a deal where Arizona State resides, because if they win the Big 12, they will be a automatic qualifier. South Carolina at 15, pretty standard. Do we have Clemson yet? Or is Clemson coming at 14?
We'll see.
I don't know if I missed. I don't think Clemson has popped up yet. So they're going to have Clemson ahead of South Carolina, I think, unless I missed something.
It's Ole Miss at 14th.
Ole Miss
dropped 5 spots after their loss.
Did I miss Clemson? I'm going back. Take a look. All right, so yeah, they have Clemson much higher.
Yeah, looking pretty dicey for Lane Kiffin's crew as far as making the playoffs concerned.
Yeah, being a 3-loss with all 3 losses being rather difficult. Bama at 13. Wow. Okay, so they
plummeted.
There's no SEC bias with this one. I did miss Clemson, right? So Clemson's going to be ranked.
Clemson's going to be top 12. So
they have Clemson ranked ahead of Alabama. That is very, very interesting. Clemson with losses to Louisville, which even though Louisville's not ranked, they're looked at very favorably as far as metrics go. And then that big blowout loss to Georgia, which maybe they're just overlooking it a little bit, just given that it was the first week of the season. But still, to have an 8-3 Bama versus
Bama might need they're saying Bama might need a little help in order to get in as an at-large.
Okay, so I have Clemson at 12.
Yeah,
do you think that they're putting Clemson ahead of Bama and Ole Miss as a way to somehow propel this South Carolina Clemson winner to be at least more in the fight for the cultural playoff? Because I don't think Clemson I technically think is the first team out, because you have to remember that Arizona State bounces up into the playoff.
Because what is that? Can Clemson make the? I think SMU and Miami are on track to meet in the ACC championship.
Yeah,
unless one of them trips up this coming week.
But can a 2-loss, if Clemson beats South Carolina, can a 2-loss Clemson somehow get in? Right now they're on the outside looking in. So
I won't say it's maybe it's a coin flip. ESPN's website has like a playoff odds prediction thing, and based on you pick a team and pick whether they win or lose, whether they win the comp, and then what their chances are of getting in. So I haven't played around with the Clemson thing on it.
That is all right.
Okay,
so
Boise State's coming in at 11. They're the highest ranked
11.
G5 team, so they're as long as they win this weekend. I think they also have a conference championship, but win out. They're getting the G5 spot.
I'm trying to see Boise last week. Boise was ahead of SMU last week, so they move SM. They're going to move SMU ahead of Boise, which probably makes sense as far as Boise's. All right, so SMU is going to be ahead of Indiana as well. Indiana at 10.
Yeah.
Indiana at 10. That is on the lower end for where Indiana could have been. I saw some arguments for them to stay ahead of Tennessee, to stay ahead of SMU, which they do not. So SMU comes in at 9. So I'm curious what they do. I mean, that's if you're the ACC right now, you're looking pretty good. If SMU's at 9, Miami's more than likely going to be at 6.
Oh wait, what do you think? What do you think all the older SMU or the ones that were old enough to follow the team back in the '80s, are thinking now? I mean,
it's been a wild journey to now be potentially playing the ACC championship.
Definitely. Now here you are, 2024, and you're potentially going to win the ACC of all conferences and get into the college football playoff.
I always get confused with them being in the ACC. Like, come on, just be in the Big 12 and put like UCF in the ACC or something. Or just whatever. Anyway, discussion for a different day. Tennessee at 8. But going back to what I was saying before, as far as SMU and Miami go, as long as that title game is decently not like it's close, it's a well played game, it's not a blowout, they have to feel pretty good about staying in. Which okay. I'll circle back to that in a second. We have Georgia at 7. So this is should be Miami at 6. Should be Miami at 6.
Yes. Probably Miami will be 6, Notre Dame in 5th, Penn State 4th, and then
that's where the discussion comes in. Do they drop Penn State? Because they're getting they're getting a little wonky here, right? They had SMU jump Boise.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't count the possibility that. Yeah, so there's Miami at 6, as we figured.
Boise struggled a little bit against Wyoming, whereas SMU defeated Virginia pretty easily. So again, just going back to what Notre Dame did compared to what Penn State did this weekend, although Penn State struggled with Minnesota, which is.
By the way, Pat, you remember all this talk about, they expand to 12 teams, it's going to devalue the regular season and all. You know what? This has made the regular season more exciting. Like, we're talking about all these playoff scenarios, who's on the bubble, like there's more teams that are in it. Like, it's exciting.
Notre Dame at 5. So they do not jump Penn State, which again, I don't not that surprised by. I think it's more of a let's see what these teams at Notre Dame, right, that they have wins over. Army's going to be playing in the ACC title game against Tulane in 2 weeks. So that's potentially a conference champion that Notre Dame can add to the resume. We'll see what Texas A&M does. If they beat Texas, they'll jump right back up. And from there, then you can start arguing that, okay, these wins that Notre Dame has accumulated, it's stronger than what Penn State's was. Resume as a whole. Okay, so Penn State at 4, Texas at 3. We'll have Ohio State at 2. And Oregon at 1. So if Penn State's at 4, that means they're the 6th seed. And if they are the 6th seed, they'll be playing the 11th seed, which right now would be, I think it'd be Indiana. I mean, we're going to get it right here, but Indiana.
So Clemson is the first team out, as you said. Yeah. Bama's a second team out.
Yeah, Clemson, first team out, Bama, second team out. So yeah, Arizona State will jump to 12. Boise jumps to 4. And this is why that 6th seed versus the 7th seed is so important, because it's the difference between playing the ACC champ, which is either going to be Miami or SMU, more likely than not, versus playing the SEC champ, which right now is Texas. But Georgia's now punched their ticket to the SEC title game. So if Georgia, provided they take care of business against Georgia Tech, but even if they don't and they win the SEC title, I think that they're still probably going to be the 2 seed over a 1-loss ACC. But that's why the 6 is preferred against a set of the 7. So yeah, it'd be Penn State,
Indiana, Penn State matchup that we've been longing for.
See, but so this is as far as first round matchups go, right? The difference. Who would you rather play, Indiana or SMU?
I'd rather play Indiana. Big Ten foe. I mean, I don't know. SMU,
It's pretty close.
it's
pretty
yeah.
close.
I don't know. I mean, I like our chances against either, but I don't know. I feel like Indiana's they've kind of been exposed a little bit by Ohio State, so I feel like Penn State can do similarly to them what Ohio State just did to them. So.
Yeah, going into this, so this is, and I put a poll up on BSD today. Who would you rather play? Thinking that it was going to be 3-loss Bama, the first team out, and we'll see what happens with the ACC, SMU, and Miami. But would you rather play Indiana or Bama? And I haven't checked the poll in a while, but it was holding pretty steady.
Definitely Indiana.
Yeah. So that's where it got interesting.
Shaky, but like still, they're far more talented than Indiana is.
Yeah. That's where it got interesting with the 6 versus the 7, because there was a scenario where Indiana is the 10 seed and Bama's the 11 seed, and it's like, well, I mean, I'd at that point just give us a 7. You know what, Notre Dame, you do have the better wins.
I'm not trying to crap on Indiana. I mean, they're a good team, but they're also a team that's caught lightning in a bottle, and to their credit, they're rolling with it, probably all the way to the playoff, and good on them. But they got exposed at Ohio State. I think they're going to get exposed in the playoff too.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. There's still, as we learned last weekend with all this, there's a lot of time. There's a lot of games left to be played, and craziness can happen. If you would have told me last week,
yeah, I know they're robbing in Purdue. I know Purdue's terrible, 1-10, but they say about rivalry games, just throw out the records.
Yeah, I mean, again, last week, literally on Friday, after talking about Ole Miss nonstop about being, I would think Ole Miss is the best SEC team, I put a feature on them, and they promptly lose to Ole Miss, or they promptly lose to Florida. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, things are generally holding steady at the top, but what happens with Texas A&M is going to be a big deal. What then happens in the SEC title game? Because if it's 1-loss Texas versus 2-loss Georgia, and we saw Georgia handled Texas pretty easily last time they played, that could affect things, right? How far does Texas drop? Because Texas doesn't have the strongest resume. Their best win will be 8-4 Texas A&M. So a lot of time left. A lot of things that can happen, potential upsets. But if you're Penn State, just going into the season, you said Penn State would be, a 1-loss team, that'd be looking at that 16, a potential first-round matchup against SMU or Indiana or Arizona State. Who knows? Maybe Arizona State jumps up a little bit. You take that. You definitely take that. So any final thoughts on playoffs before we get into Maryland? So everyone who's watching us, make sure you stick around, because we're going to talk about Maryland as well. Not logging off quickly after this one. So
it seems to me like Penn State takes care of business this weekend against Maryland. That's and assuming Ohio State beats Michigan, that should probably lock up the 6th seed for Penn State, and they'll be hosting. We'll see. Could be Indiana, maybe SMU. Who knows? Hopefully not Alabama or Georgia, or some other SEC team. But even if it is SEC team, you know what? It'd be kind of fun to see them have to come up north to State College right before Christmas, when could be frigid temps, could be some snow. Who knows?
Don't disagree on that. And again, it was a lot of fun making fun of the SEC for this couple of weeks, but I would definitely I'd rather Indiana SMU. So, all right, let's talk about Maryland. So the Terps not having the greatest season in the world, 4-7. So no chance to make a bowl game. They just lost to Iowa, who is on a backup walk-on true freshman quarterback, and Iowa handled them pretty easily. So Tim, just general thoughts going into this Maryland game. Not even so much looking at let's save like the offense versus defense talk and all that stuff. Just generally for what Penn State is playing for. How nervous are you on a scale of 1 to 10? How nervous are you for Penn State going into this game? 10 being playing Ohio State, 1 being playing like Kent State.
I put it at a 2. Penn State's had they've had Maryland's number since joining the Big Ten. The only 2 times they've lost to them were 2014 when they were at the nadir of the sanctions effect on the roster, and Maryland, with its most talented, experienced team ever under Randy Edsall, still needed a last-minute field goal to beat Penn State. And then, the COVID year that we like to say never happened, which inspired the infamous "you were, we are" tweet from Maryland football's.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Afterwards. And by the way, ever since that tweet, Pat, you want to know how badly Penn State has outscored the Terps?
I know it's bad.
112-29.
Yeah.
In the last 3 games since that.
What doesn't make any sense about that tweet, Tim, is that Penn State literally didn't even play Maryland in 2020. Penn State only played 4 games in 2020. They went 4-0, and then we said we're good. So I don't really know what the whole tweet was about, but yeah, definitely not a good idea that they tweeted that. Because like you said, it's been total domination.
It was a weird time, Pat. But yeah, they've had Maryland's number. And a lot of those wins have been blowouts. I mean, some of our more favorite ones. There was the 66-3 in 2017. There was 59-0 on a Friday night in College Park in 2019. There was the 30-0 blanking 2 years ago in State College on a rainy day. And then last year was the scoregami beatdown, 51-15. So, this is, and again, you look at the 2 rosters, and yeah, Maryland's got some talent, good individual talent, maybe especially the offensive skill positions. But problem is, they're not good up front on either side of the ball. They can get pushed around by a lot of teams and in the trenches. And, Billy Edwards, he's definitely no Talia Tagovailoa, try as he might. Roman Hemby, he's got some speed, but he hasn't really been, he's better defenses have been able to neuter him. And, and Penn State was able to take away the ground game the last few times they played them and force Maryland to throw it 50 times to try to beat them. And, I think it's going to be more of the same this year. They'll probably ball up the run game, force Billy Edwards to have to beat him with his arm. They do have a good receiver, Ty Felton. He's gone over 1,000 yards receiving, has 9 touchdowns. He's their best guy by far. So he's someone to keep an eye out for. But other than him, no one that they should be super concerned with.
Caden Prather. Caden Prather is really
good. I mean, Ty Felton's the star of that offense. So, he's a guy they got to really keep an eye out for.
I'm just saying, Caden Prather would be Penn State's best wide receiver, if we're being honest.
It wouldn't be. They did try to get him,
Trey Wallace, but he would be very good. So, yeah, certainly would love Tay Felton, but even Caden Prather, somebody who they tried to get when he transferred from West Virginia, decided to go to Maryland, just wanted to be close to home, but would have been nice because he would have been on the team last year, could have helped with things, and obviously would have helped with things this year too. What are you expecting out of, it's just a weird spot for Penn State to be in, and because it's a weird spot just generally in college football where it's almost like, you go back to 2016 with that game against Michigan State where, okay, going into the day, Penn State didn't know if they'd be playing for a Big Ten East title, but then you hear that Ohio State had beaten Michigan. Obviously, everyone around the stadium starts cheering and clapping. You can see that Franklin talking on the sideline. They all know about it, right? That you're playing for a chance to play in the Big Ten title game. You're not necessarily playing for a Big Ten title this year. I mean, we'll see what happens at the Ohio State-Michigan game. If Michigan beats Ohio State this year, Penn State would actually, if they beat Maryland, they'd be playing Oregon in the Big Ten title game. But just what are you kind of expecting that atmosphere to be like, given that Penn State, everyone knows what they're playing for. They're playing for, to go 11-1, to solidify their spot in the playoff, and to likely, to almost surely be hosting a playoff game, but to be, as high as the 6th seed. What do you kind of I don't really know what to expect from the atmosphere at Penn State.
I think it should be a bigger than usual atmosphere for Thanksgiving weekend home game because, at this point, like I said, there's they're playing to solidify home field advantage for the first round of the playoffs. That's a big deal. So, I think you're going to have a more celebratory or a bigger in terms of crowd is going to be in a celebratory mood. I'm sure everyone's thinking that they should be able to take care of business and beat up on Maryland. So that's the anticipation. So I think they'll be a pretty jovial mood from the crowd. It's also senior day, so a lot of guys are going to be honored probably, and so it's a lot going on. Of course, the weather it's going to be pretty cold and windy. It's going to feel like wintry weather conditions, probably in the 20s, I think. Don't know if there's any precipitation, but still, it's going to be kind of brutally cold out there. But I'm sure they'll probably still get more fans than they usually would for a game like this. So, I'd expect a pretty decent atmosphere.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just a different time that we're in with college football, where you are, it's the last game of the season. You're not necessarily playing for a chance to be in the conference title game, but yet, at least for Penn State, it's should be a joyous atmosphere. So, kind of curious just to see what the crowd looks like, because these, especially the when it's the final home game after Thanksgiving. Sometimes you get that final home game before Thanksgiving. When it's after Thanksgiving, it's always a mismatch of students sort of coming back, but not really coming back, right? They don't want to come back early necessarily. Crowd can sometimes just be a little dead. So curious to see what it's like with everything that Penn State has to play for. Anyway, getting back to Maryland's offense. Not a great offense. Their rush offense is 14th in the Big Ten with 3.7 yards per carry. Their pass offense is 13th in the Big Ten with 6.8 yards per attempt. As Tim mentioned before, and we were just talking about, really some pretty decent skill position guys with Ty Felton and Caden Prather. They both have some size. Felton at 6'2", Prather at 6'3". But yeah, just not a fantastic offense. Billy Edwards Jr., their quarterback, he got hurt against Iowa. They had to go to the backup, MJ Morris. It sounds like, at least Loxley is making it sound like that Billy Edwards Jr. is going to play, but remains to be seen. Either way, though, I don't love coming on here, and because this is kind of what we did last week with Minnesota, where it's like, oh yeah, not greatly concerned about the offense, but I think Penn State's going to be okay. They're certainly going to have their advantages, and specifically with being able to stop the run and stuff like that. What about Maryland's defense, Tim? What stands out defensively about the Terps?
I'd say defensively, they're led by defensively they've been pretty shaky actually. I think I don't have the stats up, but I read they were like third to last or second to last in total yards given up.
So they're 17th in the Big Ten in pass defense, and they're ninth in the Big Ten in rush defense. So I don't have
this is a team
stats.
that I was thinking to myself, well, one, of course, Penn State does. I think they have a significant advantage in the trenches, so they should be able to get the run game rolling, especially with Nick Singleton looking healthy, and I'm sure they'll throw some nice, Wild Warren packages in there too. And of course, yeah, that pass defense being that bad, I think, chance for Drew Howard to have a field day throwing the ball on them. So, I think Penn State's offense should be able to move the ball, without too much trouble against the Terps.
Yeah. They have some decent guys defensively. Defensive end Donnell Brown. I believe he played at St. Francis originally. Solid DN for him, even though this year his stats are down a little bit. Jordan Phillips, nose tackle, 6'3", 320. He comes from Tennessee. Just a big guy in the middle. Some pretty good linebackers, Ruben Hippolyte and then Caleb Wheatland. Both those guys are, I think, guys that will eventually play on Sundays, even if it's in a limited role. But that's a weird thing with Maryland. I feel like you watch an NFL game and it's like, oh, this guy was drafted in the 4th round. Now he's a second team All-Pro guy. And half the time it's like, oh, he went to Maryland. They're almost, I don't want to say the inverse of Penn State, but they're one of those programs that if you look at the amount of guys that they have in the NFL compared to how many wins they actually get in college, it's it just doesn't quite equal up. So they definitely have definitely have some good players, even defensively, and even in the back end. We mentioned that they have the 17th best pass defense in the Big Ten on a per play basis, but cornerback Jalen Husky was a transfer from Bowling Green. He's done a really nice job this year. He was a first-team All-MAC guy, comes to Maryland, and is still playing pretty well there. He has 3 interceptions this year, and is a big corner in his own right. So I lean towards like the idea, right, that if they're the 17th team as far as, pass defense, that Drew should have a big game. I kind of get the feeling, though, that this is going to be like a Nick Singleton, like he's finally going to break one. It's been a while since we've seen him have like a 40 carry. So I kind of lean towards them, really depending upon that run game. You mentioned before, it's going to be, a colder day. I'm not going to say that they're going to go conservative, but right, just given, the talent disparity that Penn State has and what they're playing for, I don't think that to get too crazy and too wild, kind of keep things steady as it goes. You don't need to blow. You don't need to completely blow them out or anything. Just pick up the win. So I think we see them really lean on the run game, and I think we finally see Nick Singleton get going a lot. Because
doesn't mean Andy Koldnicki won't do his usual creative stuff. He's not one to go vanilla ever on teams, but I agree.
No, we're definitely going to see Bo Prabila. I'll tell you that much. Andy has made it perfectly clear. It does not matter situation. He's like, my guy Bo. My guy Bo needs to get some stats. Hey, we're on a 7-play drive, and we have 55 yards, and it's 1st and 10. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna bring in Bo, and we're gonna have him. Oh, he might throw it. Oh no, he's not gonna throw it. It's just gonna be a run play. So, looking forward to that. Looking forward to the good old Bo package. But no, I just think that Nick Singleton's playing really well right now. It seems like that he's over the midseason bumps and bruises that he had. I did a rewatch of that Minnesota game because I had to write about it for BSD, and watching on the first go around was like, okay, that was like completely useless. Like my brain was complete mush. I think like pound for pound, that might have been the best Nick Singleton has been. Just grinded out tough yardage. Just looked really fast, looked really powerful. So I just get the feeling, right, just going off of vibes, that we do get a big Nick Singleton day. So hopefully that will be the case, but we'll see what happens. Tim, what are you thinking? What are you thinking score wise?
So I'm saying 42-7 Penn State.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'll tell you, Petty James Franklin, he comes out of it. You see it every year against Maryland. He'll try and run up the score if he can. But I'm thinking Penn State, they get up by a couple touchdowns in the early going, and Maryland goes into quit mode at that point, and the game feels effectively over at halftime, and then Penn State just continues to pile on in the second half. I think you might see the backups get some reps in the fourth quarter, so I think they might get a touchdown. Maybe like Corey Smith takes one to the house or something.
I can see that. I'm going a little bit closer than that. I'm kind of in between like the 2 to 3 touchdown range, and I don't particularly see this game being like, honestly, like Minnesota, where it's halftime, it's like, oh no, we're doing this again, like that type of thing. But I do have it Penn State 31, Maryland 14.
Oh,
yeah, I think this Maryland team is, I don't want to say they're better than their record necessarily, but they did have some close losses, right? They probably should have beat Michigan State. There's been some other games that they've been in. They played Indiana like decently well. Like they were basically all the way with them until the middle of the third quarter. Even the Rutgers game, they probably could have won. So I don't think there are a couple plays from being a 6-6 team. So I don't think they're like a true like Purdue like team or something like that. But it's just what is Maryland playing for? How much do they actually care about this game?
That was going to be my net. It's like, they're 4-7. They're not, they're not going to a bowl game. What's their motivation? I guess their only sense of motivation could be, we'll stick it to Penn State and ruin their, potential, their playoff, or ruin. I don't know. I did probably at this point they probably still get in, even if worst case scenario they lost. But I was playing around with the ESPN track. I don't want to think about it, but I was playing around with it. Like 75% odds of getting in at 10-2, but I don't think it's going to happen. But that's the only motivation Maryland would even have coming into this, is to try and ruin Penn State's season. But Penn State is not about, they've been through a lot this season. I mean, you had to navigate that season opener at West Virginia with the 2-hour plus lightning delay, and then you had to go grit out a tough one at USC. You're down by 2 touchdowns at halftime, and your kicker comes up clutch in overtime. Theirs doesn't. And then the Wisconsin game, Drew Auer goes down right before halftime. Here comes Bo Perbula. A lot of us are thinking, oh boy, this is Iowa 2021 all over again. But Bo steadies the ship. The offense starts to run smoothly under him, smoothly enough to be able to salt away that game ultimately. And of course, aided by a pick 6 from Jalen Reed. But they gritted out a tough win there at Wisconsin, and then obviously Ohio State, that was a tough loss. And then Minnesota, I mean, they were pushed to the brink there, and James Frank, boy, I mean, call of the year, going for the fake punt in their own 35-yard line, and that's kind of the season right there. I mean, they convert that. They convert 2 more 4th and 1s to ice the game. I mean, it was clear Franklin had no intention of willingly giving the ball back to Minnesota, because he knew his defense was tired and he didn't want to have to put the game in their hands. So they've been through a lot. I mean, I just can't fathom them just tripping over themselves against this edition of Maryland, especially.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood. Sorry, during while you were talking, I went on Twitter because I realized we haven't tweeted anything out from BSD about the number 4 ranking. But anywho, Nicole Auerbach, who I generally like, NBC, she was one of the ones being the drum for, I think Notre Dame's going to jump Penn State, so fine, whatever. She tweets at 8:37, it's crazy that the selection committee still has Notre Dame behind Penn State. Why do we have to speak in these stupid absolutes? I don't want to go on a rant right now. But,
crazy at all.
Well, it's come on. I absolutely understand. Somebody thinks that Notre Dame's a better team than Penn State and should be ranked above Penn State. There's an argument, as we talked about when we started this podcast, right? Before the rankings came out, we talked about how, Notre Dame has the better wins than Penn State. But come on, it's not like Notre Dame went out and they beat Tennessee, right? They didn't beat a top 10 team. They didn't beat Miami. Their best win, according to the College Football Playoff Committee, is number 20 Texas A&M. Penn State's best win is number 23 Illinois. And yes, the Illinois game was a home game for Penn State. The Texas A&M for Notre Dame game was an away game. Completely understand Texas A&M is still the better team and still the better win. But it's not the wide gap that it is for Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois at home and Penn State losing to number 2 Ohio State at home. That is the biggest differentiator between these two teams. Period. End of story. Anyway, Tim, sorry. Just the discourse with the playoff, and I understand that, these on threes and apparently NBC Sports and everywhere else, they do this to get a rise out of people like me, and you can see my face is getting all red and flustered out of it. But it's just I don't understand how you watch college football and you see all the wild wackiness, craziness that has happened, and we say this entire season, it doesn't really seem that there's that many elite teams. The difference between the number 4 team and the number 13 team isn't that big of a deal. And then we get to these rankings and people are all up in arms over who's 4 versus 5 when it's so close and both have an argument. But anyway, Tim, sorry to bring it back to the college football playoff rankings. I just wanted to get that off my chest.
It's time of year, Pat. I'm just talking about the college football playoff rankings.
Yes. But anyway, so you have 42-7 Penn State winning an easy one. Easy one? Do you think they get off to is it a, go back to 2022 where Penn State just, really stepped on their throats right away, or 2017?
I think it'll be similar to those games, or even 2019. I think they come out swinging, and I think I think just like they started with Washington and Purdue, I think, they get up early by a couple scores and, kind of cruise from there. And again, I think I don't know if I mentioned, one of my X factors would be if I was, when I type these up later this week would be, just jump on them early. You get up by 2 scores early. You get to like a 14-0 lead, even like a 10-0 lead early. I think the Terps could go into quit mode.
And that's
4-7, don't have anything to really play for.
I think that's even partly the case with like even Minnesota last week, for example. Obviously, Minnesota playing like just they're a better team than Maryland, and it was a home game at Senior Day and all things like that. But when you are the underdog like that, and you get a 3-and-out to start, and on your first drive you get a touchdown, that kind of can just catapult you all the way throughout the rest of the game. So no, I think.
By the way, Minnesota put up 48 on Maryland at home. Yeah. So I mean, that's partially also why I picked 42 for Penn State. I think they can put up a similar amount of points.
Yeah, no, it certainly would be nice to, cap the regular season with an exclamation point after, some ups, some downs, right? It seemed like we were on a better track after the Washington Purdue games, and then you get a slugfest with Minnesota, which sometimes happens, but it'd certainly be nice to win a comfortable game like that. I think we see a little bit of a slower start, but again, I still think Penn State's up something like 17-7 at halftime, and they pull away without much cause for concern. So I have Penn State 31-14. You have Penn State 42-7. Any other final thoughts before we sign off, Tim?
Well, it's like I say, it's an exciting time as a Penn State fan. To be on the verge of making program history. Not just by making the playoff for the first time ever, but also, hosting a game at Beaver Stadium, for a playoff game in December for the first time ever as well. So, I mean, you remember during that COVID year where they hosted Illinois the week before Christmas. I mean, it'll be like that, except, like 1,000 times better than that.
a little bit more people in the stands this go around. Before we actually sign off, Tim, you're do you gamble on sports a little bit here and there? Do you dabble in it?
Aside from doing March Madness pools, no, not really.
Regardless, still going to ask you. Brett McMurphy of Action Network HQ, formerly ESPN, has what would be the projected point spreads for the first round playoff games. So what do you think would be the point spread for Penn State, Indiana? I'm putting you in the hot spot here.
For Penn, do you have a number in front of you? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm guessing here. All right.
Yeah.
Penn State,
I had the correct
Indiana. I'm gonna guess 10.5 for Penn State.
Not bad. 8.5. 8.5.
Okay.
So not a bad guess.
I was thinking 9.5 maybe, but I don't know. I went to 10.5 for some reason. So I was close though.
Yeah, 8.5. That feels about right.
I would jump on Penn State with it.
Yeah, but all right. Anyway, it's just funny because last week it was all about the Georgia would be -1.5, Bama would be -1.5, Ole Miss would be favored on the road, and now 2 of those 3 teams are not even in the playoffs. So take that, SEC. And sorry just to end on a sorrowful note, I do want to send my condolences to Greg Sankey, who, I'm sure he just tried his damnedest. He did everything he could to have those 3 lost SEC teams be ranked a little bit higher. And for the committee to be like, you know what, Greg, actually, we're done doing your dirty work. We're going to put 2 lost Clemson. 2 lost Clemson ahead of Bama and Ole Miss. I would love to watch these rankings released with Greg Sankey, because it would be a joy. I'm sure he's just a smitten kid right now. But all right. Thank you, Tim, for joining as always. Thank you everybody for watching. Saw that we, obviously had quite a few people who are watching live and still have some people watching live. So thank you. We really do appreciate that. Make sure that you're liking the video. Make sure that you are subscribing to the channel. We did hit over 140 subscribers, Tim, prior to going live tonight. I believe we were at 143. We're still at 143, which, come on, let's up those numbers. Let's get to 150. 150 before. Let's get to 150 before Saturday. When we log on Saturday after the game to hopefully celebrate Penn State, clinching their spot in the playoff, I want to see 150 subscribers. So let's get to 150. And yeah,
we can make it happen, folks.
Like I just said,
subscribe buttons.
Like I just said, we'll be live on Saturday after the game. It is a 3:30 kick, so thinking that we'll go live around 7 o'clock or so. So make sure that you tune in to join us. If it's a win, it's going to be lots of celebration, right? Clinching our spot in the playoff. If it's a loss, might be even more entertaining. But let's not even think of that. Let's think about the wins only. So thank you guys. Make sure you're reading our SoBlessYourDiaries.com, and we will see you on Saturday. And have a happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.